You're listening to The Adventuring Party, talking about gaming the Irish way.
Welcome to the party. I'm Dave.
I'm Owen.
And I'm Shane.
So, shopping. Does it take a little while?
It has been known to take a little while, and it is known to be a recurring problem in our role playing games. I believe we've breached this topic a few times in the past, but it always bears going over again, much like the equipment lists that the everyone in the party has to double check to make sure they've gotten everything they want.
It's certainly more. Well, it's certainly more of an issue for some systems than others.
Yeah, we've all seen the Cyberpunk catalog books.
Well, they are to be fair, those are kind of genius bits of world building as well because they're in the format of corporate catalogs.
Indeed, and honestly, if your GM is willing to put in the effort, you could very easily do that the same way with a shopping list and have each individual thing in the thing have its own. You can have each item on your list demonstrate some part of your world, like the holy water comes from the various water goddess, or there are competing brands of holy water as the various gods try to make sure no, we're the solution to the undead, or the wooden stakes come from a particular type of tree that's holy and blessed by the druids, and so on. But very often the problem is, well, the GM's not ready for that level of putting that out into a cool shopping list, and instead it's the players coming up to them, waving the kit manual or the supplement in their faces, saying, "I want to go into Superstore and buy all these off the shelf." People get very capitalistic, modern ideas about how shopping works.
Yeah. Just rolling back to Cyberpunk for a second. I recall some GM advice about players don't seem to get that you can't even in a near 20 minutes into the future setting, that you might not always be able to get what you want at any given time. There's such a thing as a black market, and the black market may not have everything handily fallen off the back of a truck, and it certainly might not be at the price that is listed in the nice shiny corporate manual.
Yeah,
but that offers opportunities to cultivate contacts, to do favors for people who have things that have fallen off the back of a truck, and maybe you get them for less than the going rate.
Yeah, it's always a balance you have to track. It's like the economy can be a horrendously social thing, particularly if you're sort of in your grey market, black market zone of legality. And all of a sudden, making friends and influencing people becomes just as important as, finding 10,000 new yen in someone's coat pocket after you shoot them. And yeah, it all comes down to what level of effort is your GM prepared for or wants to put into their game, and does that expectation match up with the players do it? Because very often you're all hyped up for the next adventure, and it's just like, I've prepped this dungeon, I've got my hex map already, I know the names, motivations of all these NPCs they'll meet along the way, and then suddenly there's this U-turn as people say, "Oh, I didn't buy any iron rations. So while we're getting iron rations, we should buy a bunch of donkeys. And while we're buying a bunch of donkeys, we'd probably look for +7 swords." And
yeah, there's also the problem that like you have systems which assume you have certain equipment even to manage the encounters, like not like the likes of 3. D&D third edition or Pathfinder, assume you're going, or at least Pathfinder first edition are going to assume that you have a certain amount of magic items giving you such and such a buffs going, and that's built into the the challenge ratings, such as they are.
Yeah.
Pathfinder second edition has baked in assumptions that basically this is a level 4 item. By level 4, there are you should have one of these if you want one. So, for example, the math assumes that you get your +1 weapon or +2 weapon or +3 weapon roughly around the level, either level earlier or level after you get it. And it's also true for your skill items. It's also true for your apex items when you get there, right? So the kind of interesting one is sometimes that players will go, hang on, I haven't gotten a +2 major striking weapon yet. I need a +2 major striking weapon because I'm a striker, because I make melee attacks. I need one of these. And then other player goes, I don't have a cloak. I don't have resistance rune in my armor yet. I need a resistance rune. And there hits a session where basically the players go, hang on, how much treasure have we got? Person who keeps the treasure, tot it up for us. I think about 12,000 gold. Hang on, I'm not using this yoke anymore. Toss stuff more in the pile. Okay, I've got about 16,000 gold. Okay, what are we spending on? And then that becomes the session. There's nothing wrong with that, but there are definitely sessions that just become, this is literally the players going, I want to buy some stuff in the shop. And then everyone wants to get their little bit of, might be like, yeah, actually, I kind of want one of these, or I feel like I'd do well getting one of those staves, or I really want an LMG. Can I get an LMG now? Because we've got quite a lot of credits, right? And that then becomes the session. And is the right thing to do when you hit the occasional shopping session, which is probably one in every 10, 15, 20 sessions, is the GM to just go, you know what, guys? Away you go. Have a chat amongst yourselves. I'm going to make a cup of tea. If you've got any questions, I'll be right back. And should the GM then role play every acquisition? Or should the GM go, you know what? I'm going to pick 2 or 3 of these. I'll role play some stuff out around this. But otherwise, away you go. I'm not going to keep trying to step in and reestablish immersion. I'm just going to let you do your shop, and I'll have a quiet session here. I'm gonna have a cup of tea. You know what? I'm gonna have a biscuit. Hell, I might have 2. Like,
Yeah.
what do you do as the GM when the players suddenly realize, you know what, we're short a bunch of critical equipment here? Often happens in the case of sometimes specialist mission equipment. When someone's like, let's break into this bunker and hack the computer. And someone's like, okay, well, we can do that. I'm not great at hacking computers, so I think there's a tool to make us better at this. Hang on. And they suddenly start poring over splat books, looking for the perfect pieces of equipment and how much money do we have, and can we sell that stuff, and can we do the other bits and pieces. And as the GM, are you best up just going, you know what, guys, I'm not going to try and guide this session at all. The feet are going up, and I'll just listen. If you got a question, I'm right here. Otherwise, this is about you. Away you go. Is it a very player-driven session where the players are actually talking about what they want to get? Like, not all games have this. Some games don't give a toss about equipment, but other games really care about it. At which point, that I'm going to basically do a shopping session. Like, what do you do as a GM? Do you try and be there? Oh, I'll direct all this. I'll make this. I'll bring this to life. I'll think about those NPCs. It's just like, you know what? Sort out what you're doing. I'll come in the end with some stuff. Because if you coming in to try and jazz it up, you're maybe interrupting their train of thought.
Yeah. And also it will depend on where you're expecting it. Or is it literally just the spur of the moment cavalcade of, oh, we should need this, and then suddenly people turn on their shopping brains, and the system that the session that you expected to be to get them halfway to the next adventure is actually turned into a shopping session before you were ready, and that's probably the pain point that people have say where they're having, because if you're all mentally prepared for, exploration or travel or, planning or whatever, and instead it's turned into what can sometimes be very dry numbers.
Oh, absolutely! It can be a terribly dry session, but it's terrible to listen to. It's awful. Like, if you were doing kind of a live play, you would never do a shopping session because it's so boring. But for the players, it can actually be quite. They're carefully thinking stuff through. They're engaged with it. Just and it's important. Is it important as a GM to go? You know what? I am taking a back seat here, and I'm going to put my feet up, and I'm going to just listen. And if they've got a question, I'll answer a question. And otherwise, it's not worth getting upset about if they decide to do this.
Well, one way to maybe head that off, if that is a problem, and it may not be a problem for everyone, is to try to encourage players to to sort out shopping in between sessions. At the very least, get their list sorted, ready. Like if they need to make rolls, if those rolls can be made in between sessions, make them. Like like a lot of the Fantasy Flight 40k games have various types of roles to acquire items. Well, to find them and then to acquire them. And honestly, those roles could be probably done in a Discord server, or or the difficulty sorted out ahead of time, and just bang, bang, bang at the table, and not taking overly long.
Yeah, absolutely. The difficulty, of course, is that sometimes it's contingent. Okay, if I can get this new weapon, I'm going to sell my other weapon. Or do you need me to get rid of this thing? I kind of want to hang out with it otherwise. Well, if we see one of those, I would totally sell this to get that. So it often needs to be a session because it's more than just one person's resources. Because a lot of games, everyone pools their resources, which is fine. And they can all go, let's buy a healing scroll for the cleric. Or let's buy, a Staff of the Magi for the wizard. Or whatever. And it actually, at the table, sometimes somebody's like, you know what you should get? You should get this ring. It's really good. It'll really help you out. And sometimes there's a couple of more mechanically savvy players who end up leading the whole thing and just going, who needs a striking rune? Who needs a resistance rune? Has everyone got all that grand? We're just getting property runes. What goes do you want? I'd recommend flaming. And they're often doing that. And again, as the GM, is it your job at that point to go, oh, well, gee, I better make sure everyone's having fun here? Or is it just to go, you know what, let the guys pick stuff out? Like, do you need to kind of insist that you have your kind of input or your little stick your oar in there? Or is it better just go, you know what, guys, I'm here if you need me? Which do you go with?
Yeah, it can be a bit of a judgment call because, as you say, if you're putting yourself in too strong, you may be disrupting the fun of this because the fun of the shopping is, well, it's a very personal, maybe not personal, but like it's a very instinctual thing as you're going through, that Argos catalog feeling, RIP
Absolutely.
Argos.
And some players like it and some players don't.
Yeah, that's I think the real thing is that I mean, at a certain point, you may just have to put your hand up and say, all right, who wants to actually go through the catalogs and do all the money, and who would just like to hand their equipment sheets to the other players to adjust and have a side session with, Goblin in an alleyway or whatever. Even
if they don't like it, they often don't want to basically completely hand over their agency. They often want to be involved, even if they don't. They're like, oh God, this is taking so long. And it often takes ages, and it's very dull. But it's what should you do if there's a couple of players who are involved in putting together the shopping list and figuring out what resources they have, and then there's 2 other players that are bored. What should you do at that point as a GM?
I mean, just because the players are some of the players are taking the raids doesn't mean that you've lost your responsibilities as a dungeon master. I mean, if you have these dedicated players who want to run the math, it feels like they could have done this between sessions. And
yeah, but it might be 3 of them talking about and arguing about it. We should get this. No. I think we get this. I think this is actually more important. And they're having fun. They're interacting with each other. They're discussing the best choice to make, and they may not have all been in the same room or on the same Discord server between the session to do that. So you got to respect that one. But at the same time, maybe I've got these players who aren't interested. Should I have jotted down a few ideas for a relevant shopping related adventure? Like a little mini adventure to run. You go, okay, guys, you're not interested in this. Cool. Here's what we're going to do. The 3 of us are going to do a side session, just like a side scene, and we're going to go off and we're going to do this while the rest of them are arguing about what to pick. Arguing the merits of falchions versus greatswords, and in that meantime, we're going to do something that's vaguely related to this. Maybe you guys get asked by a shopkeeper to deliver something, and he'll toss you a discount. You do something that's relevant to what the other people are doing, but in a manner or in an aspect that they're more interested in. So maybe you basically go, these guys like these 2 players like fighting, so I'll put together a very simple combat encounter where the 2 of them, rather than the normal 4 of them or 5 of them, have to take on a weaker threat, but they're missing some of their key skills, and they're going to fight this one without some of their other tricks. Or maybe they like role playing, and you basically have to do a little negotiation and do a little. Oh, I can give you one of these, but someone else is going to have to give you one of those salmon flanges. Think of a little side quest. If you notice that some of the players aren't interested or aren't engaged with it, and say, right, what do I do? Where do I step back and where do I step in? And I think that's the interesting stuff about the shopping session, is because the player group can divide into the people who are engaged and interested with it, and the people who are kind of like, yeah, I'm just waiting for this to be over.
Yeah.
Like, what would you like if you had a 5-player team, Sean or Shane, and 3 of them are actively debating what to buy next, and they're engrossed in it. They've got books open, they're poring over things. One person's doing a tot with the amount of gold coins they have, and 2 people are bored out of their gourd. What do you do at that point?
I do think at that point, if you have that really stark divide, then yeah, you should be probably putting the 2 bored people, give them something, and that maybe a test of improv skills. If this has come out of nowhere, you may be having to figure out. Oh, I guess this shop has a basement full of mutant rats, or the magic carpet accidentally summoned a genie to roleplay with, or something like that. If you're prepared, then you can have all kinds of weird and wonderful adventures in the magic shop where, while the players are counting their coins, the 2 other people can be like hunting through the infinite store shelves looking for the 1 blue +3 sword of slaying to go with their aesthetic or what have you.
Is this a GM prep thing that maybe you think about it before it ever comes up, and you make the note that someone does a shopping session, 2 of the players are really disengaged, you go, okay, the next time this happens, I should have thought of a random side quest. I should think of an NPC. I should think of a let's say I go, okay, right, I'm thinking of NPC. There's going to be a crazy druid who's got a bunch of really valuable fungi that he's trying to sell, but the fungi spray spores over everybody when he comes out of town, so he's getting driven out of town. And maybe you guys can go help him. Basically, either find a way to protect the fungi so they don't spray their spores everywhere, or bring go in, explain, be able to. He's not literate, so you've got to basically go in, make notes of what he has, and basically bring it into town, explain it to people that this is what he's got. What do you want? And basically think up a session beforehand. Think up, okay, I'm going to think up like a short one. This is going to require a little bit of role playing, a little bit of chatting, a couple of skill tests, maybe a little bit of fighting, and that's my and that's the bit that I've gotten ready beforehand. You take 15, 20 minutes, half an hour at some point during your week. You write up one of these plots and go, okay, I'm saving this as my interlude scene when I'm stuck.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
like in verse, it's not a bad idea to have something like that in the bag, regardless.
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe you have one of the players is like, you know what, I've got a yen that get us a uniform. And you come up with a little mini idea for, okay, what type of uniform do you want? Basically, you put together a checklist for here's what someone's uniform design things would be. Okay, I could do all this stuff. I've got, a list of questions. I put together 20 questions about what your uniform is going to look like. Something like that, where you're like, and then that player gets to go, look, I've got us all uniforms. What do? They're uniforms. They just look cool.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you want to basically have a thought about, okay, what can I do? What will these other two players be interested in? What do they like? Put that together, a couple of scenes like that. And then when the next time we're doing a shopping session, I'm going to reach into the bag, pull that out and go, okay, you two, we're doing this now. And you should make it slightly relevant so that there's a payoff that dovetails back with what the other people are doing for the shop. Maybe it's a bit more of a discount. Maybe it's some more gold. Maybe it's an opportunity to get something that wasn't on the standard shopping list.
Yeah.
Dovetail it together so that the players come back together at the end and they each did a little bit of teamwork and accomplished something towards the shared goal. That's what I think, at least.
Yeah, well, that sounds good. But it's definitely something to consider if you have this sort of mercantile element. If you're running a D&D, and or a cyberpunk or something else that's very materialistic in this way, it is smart to have a couple of shop NPCs and shop side quests in your back pocket, ready for prime time, as it were. Particularly if you don't know exactly when it's going to happen.
To be fair, it's like, as I said, it's never a bad idea to something in the back pocket for a rainy day. I mean, surprises are going to happen, not just shopping related, but just in terms of equipment, there can, like, again this depends on the game and genre, but there can be, I suppose, an over focus on having the perfect equipment set rather than making what you have work, or over preparing, because I'm a big fan of clever player plans, but it can get to a point where people are just rehashing the same ideas and not actually getting anywhere and chewing up valuable gaming time.
Yeah, but if I just got like the +7 climbing gear, I could always climb cliffs on a 2, and would not be so cool. And just like there's no such thing as +7 climbing gear. No one has that. That's not something the Wizards make. Or it can be. It depends. An awful lot is going to depend on how not crunchy, but like how finely detailed a given rule set is. Because you have something like the 40k D percentile systems, where you can have a weird item that has an extra +3 on athletics or +5 on willpower when facing a demon on Tuesday, and that's kind of relevant. That's kind of possible. But say you're in something like it's 5th ed DD, where the difference between a +1 and +2 is meant to be like 3 or 4 levels worth of progression, and suddenly you can't have random bonuses be plopped in without throwing off all the math, then it becomes harder to customize. Oh, my chainsaw does better against this type of wood, or all the little things that say in the modern day you would have. Oh, I prefer this this manufacturer of these tools because of it works better in this situation. You might not be able to model that in a game, and that's some people criticize, say, those cyberpunk shopping lists. It would say, oh, you have 7 pages of assault rifles and all of them do 2d10 damage. What's the point of that? And you can say, well, the point's all the world building and all the brand loyalty and all the neat sarcastic advertising and what it means about how the corporations are evil. But in terms of mechanics, these things might all look the same to the observer, and it's like, what's the point of that?
Stay tuned for a future episode when Owen rants about how weapon design has gone down the wrong rabbit hole. The thing I notice often is weapons and armor and stuff, combat gear, often has a very careful eye or reasonably careful eye for balance tossed over it. The real stuff that gets funky is the skill related things. Because if you're a crunchy game and you're publishing a bunch of skill related stuff, I was often scrolling like Star Wars Genesis, the Genesis space system. It wasn't the Genesis space system, but it's now the Genesis space system. And they would often have incredibly powerful stuff for hacking or disguise and stuck in different splat books. And I would often make it a point to read through the stuff, and I would file things away. And someone's like, we need to hack this computer. And I said, what we need to get is one of these. We have one of these, this, doohickey. It'll make the hacking way easier. Like almost permanently way easier. We should get one of these. Or this one fixes this specific job. Remember the thing about they know which our ship is because of our transponder code? This is the variable transponder setting. It's 10,000 credits. It fixes this whole plot point for us. And that's an interesting one for a GM because GM go, hang on a second, let me see that. It does what? And because often the skill selection stuff isn't that well looked over. And then the GM is like, okay, this kind of blows my plan out of the water. If I just let them go down the shops and make a roll, this is over. Does this shopping session then become a plot seed for a future adventure? I can make this an adventure though, or I can make this a short one for them to get one of these doohickeys, and then away we go. We've got our next session, or we've got our next subplot.
Yeah, I think there's a certain point of something could be in the book at a certain price, but the GM is still allowed to say, well, that's a level 1 hacking thing that can bring down governments. I think you might need to know some people before you can get one of those. And, turn your shopping session into a skullduggery, make friends in the black market, figure out which of the 5 crime lords here doesn't sell drugs to children, so we can buy it off them. That kind of deal. I think the GM still has the right to go, well, if you're going for something specific to, as a mission buster, well, I guess I'm going to manipulate some of the solutions that I thought I had for this, and turn, these people traffickers who are going to smuggle you out on a boat into the regular smugglers who are going to, have one of these things in the back of their van, and you're reusing your material, but you also have the advantage of, well, the players came up with this idea, so they're more invested in it, and that can be to the benefit. But if you're in one of those unfortunate games where it gives out super clear availabilities, and it says, oh no, you can get this in any shop on the high street, and it's just like, what? I don't think someone thought this whole anti-government hacking software market through.
Yeah, not thinking things through is that you could make a series on that. In regards to game design.
Yeah,
play testing, it's wonderful.
Yeah, but often the playtesting will cover stuff like balance and economics is a very back foot thing for that. The other thing, the other thing is like it could be a very interesting opportunity for certain social character design, like or maybe instead of social skills, all of a sudden this is where backgrounds come into it, where suddenly the fighter's mercenary contacts might be more relevant than the bard's, plus 27 to diplomacy, and you could sort of leverage that as a way to create availability and say, well, if you want weapons, you got to go through the tough guys, people, or maybe you can't wizard your way out of this. You have to use hacking. So it can also be a tool for shining a spotlight on party members who, rather than because this is the big threat of the shopping session. Apart from all the list diving, there's the other big bugbear, which is the haggling. This is the part where I start to shrivel up like a prude in disgust, because there's some people who will insist on just throwing their diplomacy numbers at every interaction and sort of try to beat discounts out of the system through application of natural 20s. And then there's the flip side of that, where someone will just start try to argue with the GM like you're at the county fair and it's the bring and buy sale, and you're pretty sure you can knock €10 off that because I know your ma, and that could also be a bit awkward. So, is it wrong to be for GM to sort of just kick either of those kind of assumptions, because they are sort of they are very much get €200 every time you pass go levels of assumed rules that aren't, well, sometimes they're explicit, sometimes.
Well, the thing is, the reason people might think haggling works is because haggling is done in real life, and maybe they haggle in real life, and maybe you don't, and you're like, "Why you try? The price is the price." And you're like, "The price is the price," So you'll get that happening where some people are hagglers in real life and some people are not.
Yeah,
the price is the price, and like the other people are like, it's not.
Yeah,
there's always shave in there,
some people in real life aren't even familiar with the concept of haggling, let alone do it themselves. Like I've had to explain it to a few people. But there's depending on the abstraction of the system you're using, haggling is is built into the roles, and that is a part of the price of abstraction.
Yeah. And of course, to be fair, it's entirely possible for GM to also be doing this, where they expect the players to start arguing over prices and having a bit of banter back and forth, and the GMs and the players may be just like, no, I give them money, I'll give him an extra 5% as a bribe to make sure he doesn't talk to anyone. Can we just move on to the next scene? Because it's entirely possible for GM to be making some of these mistakes as well. But again, they're not mistakes if everyone's on the same page. If no one wants to haggle, then we're cool. If everyone wants to haggle, we're cool. The problem is, again, if you have 3 people who want to haggle and the 2 people in the corner who just want to, can we just get on with it?
Like, some people really dig it. They've got all this patter prepared. You take the coin from my children's mouths, or and they dig it, and you're like, oh god, I hate this. This is like chewing glass to me. But who really dig it? I mean, and if a player really digs it, I think as a GM, you have to give it a go. You have to be ready to kind of back and forth a little bit. There's some people who are just going to go, I use my charisma at him, and in reality, that works too. So, I think you can always set, like, okay, guys, you can, if you're rolling dice, you get max 10% discount. That's it. That's the ceiling. That is as high as you go. There's no getting stuff for free just because you roll a 20. And basically, early on, you can set those ground rules, and then everyone's happy, or at least equally unhappy. Or like, okay, well, I could get with 10% off. I can't go more than that, And I'm like, everyone's got margins, They'll go 10. That's that, and that's it, But I think if some players will do it, other players won't. And if they do it, you've got to respect the fact that they're doing it. They care. Like if someone goes, I haggle, it's either because they're really stuck for money, or they enjoy doing it, or they think that's what they do in real life. So let them roll. Like set your thresholds of 10% is what you get. That's the max you get. 5% is success, 10% is critical success, and then at least everyone knows that's the way it goes. And that automates the process for you. You go make a check. Okay, I got a 20. Away we go. And that's it. And you're not allowed to go to 20 different shops, and just keep trying to get critical success.
Yeah, again, your level of abstraction is going to be thinking like if you are in the shopping district, and we can just sort of assume you're looking for the best price, you're haggling with the right people, and we can just say the price of the sheet assumes you're haggling, or you can go. I mean, sorry, I'm now remembering like the whole section of the DMG where Gygax explains that the reason why all of a sudden garlic costs like 2 silver a clove is because all the merchants of town know that you're an adventurer and know that they can mark up the prices. So certain level of system abstraction could always be assumed, and again, it's going to be flavor to taste. You're going to have to feel it out with your players. Maybe this is why maybe an initial, like if you think this is going to be a recurring thing, maybe having an initial like session 1 shopping session to sort of feel out like what people's vibes are for this kind of thing are. And then sort of get your patterns set up there so that you know how to run this stuff in future. And
one last thing to consider: what if you have players who nobody shops, and they just build up piles and piles of treasure that they never use, and gold and credits and everything else, and they're rich beyond the dreams of avarice, but they just never consider using it?
Depending on the game, that's fine. Like maybe the point, maybe their character is just determined to accumulate wealth, and that like without buying tools. I remember some games where the vast majority of equipment isn't bought but salvaged or crafted. And there is a certain there's a certain appeal to having every single piece of gear you have be meaningful. Oh, I made my character made this from the first beast he slew, or I wrested this sword from a deadly and ancient tomb. It's ever served me well since.
Yeah, I mean you can easily get this kind of thing happening when, say, you're running a more modern system, but you use a really old-fashioned adventure, and the old-fashioned adventure is expecting, oh, they need to have 10,000 gold by the end of this adventure, they won't level up. And then you're running it in a fancy modern system, and just people are just piles of gold, and there's no clear method to do it. I mean, one thing you can do there is start going off the shopping list and start adding interesting things. Offers like land grants are always one thing, or maybe even if you're in a more modern thing, maybe someone comes to them offering them shares in something, some invest in something that might be an interesting little side plot. And I mean, if they are running around with a giant chest full of gold everywhere they go, and they just keep adding it, and, buying new and more elaborate, more trap-filled chests, I would imagine someone will come along and say, "So you got a lot of money. I really need that to raise an army. Can we sort something out here?" And like turning your players' habits into adventure is just a very important GM skill to have.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very context sensitive, but you should have to think about it, especially if you're playing a game which has a complicated enough equipment list that the shopping session does happen, or has an acquisition doesn't have an acquisition system that goes, this reduces this down to one roll and you get one thing a session, which is what 40k is to do.
Yeah. Excuse me.
Alrighty. Well, if you have had problems with scalpers and other troublesome people in your game, making life hard for your players to get what they want, perhaps join us on our Discord. But for now, this party's over.
Thank you for listening to The Adventuring Party. If you'd like to leave us a voicemail, you can head on over to SpeakPipe and drop us a line. Or you can join us on our Discord server, where we keep the party going after hours. Otherwise, you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, Spotify, or Twitter. Or you can email the hosts at party@theadventuringparty.net. The Adventuring Party is released under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial Share-alike version 3 license. But you probably knew that already. We hope you enjoyed the episode and look forward to seeing you back here next week. Goodbye.